Hi, it's Amy Shaw here. It is October 7th, 2016, and what I want to talk about today is shamanism. It seems to be the growing topic of my channel, something that's on my mind and heart a lot lately. Before I get started, I wanted to give a plug for our brother, Rak Razam. He's doing a new series called Shamans of the Global Village. You can check that out online at shamansoftheglobalvillage.com. Until October 8th, he was offering the first episode of that for free. So if you missed that deadline, I'm really sorry. I should have probably got the word out sooner. But even if you have to pay a little bit of money to see it, I strongly urge you to do it. In that first episode, Rak follows along with a toad medicine man, and we actually see a group of people engaging in the sacred toad medicine ritual. In other words, 5-MeO-DMT medicine. It's very, very intense, visceral footage, so I'll warn you ahead of time. And even if that's not your particular path or you're not interested in that, it is a legitimate path. And it isn't, at this point in time, my path. But I think it's important for us to, if we're going to understand shamanism, to understand all of it. And the entire series is going to be, I'm really excited about it. Rak's going all over and sort of exploring shamanism, the resurgence in the indigenous cultures, and also the upsurgence in Western culture. And so one of the things that I really, really love, that's endearing to me about Rak, is that he is very much about the unity and the oneness of the brother and sisterhood, and encouraging and supporting one another. In the first episode, Rak points out that, you know, in indigenous cultures, if we count one shaman to every 100 people in the tribe, we are at a point right now where there's 7 billion people on the planet. That equates to 70 million shamans that are needed right now at this time. So I just urge you to step up. If you even have a inkling that might be your calling, start exploring it. And those of you that are you know, already somewhere on that path, step up. It's time for us to really, really step up. We are really, really needed right now. Okay, the first thing that I want to talk about today is a medicine bag. This is my medicine bag. It's small, it's growing. And I want to talk about the importance of this for me, what it is. Now, inside here is probably 7 or 8 things, and they're all really sacred things to me. They hold a certain energy. And so how I use my medicine bag, and not to be confused with, say, a mesa bundle. A mesa carrier is a very distinct cultural expression of shamanism, and I have not gone through the ritual and process to earn, so to speak, my mesa, because that particular brand of shamanism is not exactly my path. While there's certain aspects of it I've been exposed to that resonate with me that I like, to follow that pure and true is not, at this point in time, my particular path in shamanism. So this is not a mesa bundle, not to be confused with that. It's a little bit different. This, again, is what I call it, my medicine bag. And inside of it are things that hold a certain power to me. How I use my medicine bag is when I'm going out and doing particular types of work. I bring it with me, and I just have it near in my space. It sort of anchors me to that empowerment, that sense of the work. I also, because I do a tremendous amount of my work in dream time, I also sleep with it next to me in my bedroom. I also will put it under my pillow on certain occasions when I have a very strong intention of some work that I want to do during dream time. So that's how I use it. Now, what is in the bag? I'm not actually going to reveal it to you. I'm sure you'd like to kind of know. It rattles a little bit, but I'm not gonna expose that. And there's people that will say, well, come on, there's no need to be defensive, let's rise above this duality. And but what I was taught is that the shamans of the old, they would guard certain things secret, very close to their heart. For example, their spirit guides, they wouldn't share what the actual form of their spirit guides were, because the reason why is that, the shamans were the sort of the seers of the tribe. They helped the people to gather food and to know, important information for survival. So if there were warring factions or different tribes, and if there was any kind of conflict or animosity between tribes, then the shaman of one tribe, if he knew what the spirit guides or what the, particular medicine was of the shaman of the other tribe, then he could, shapeshift or appear in the other shaman's visions as that guide to mislead him or trick him. And so it's something that, certain things as a shaman you hold near and dear, close to your heart. And that's the reason why. Another thing that a shaman will hold close to them is their power, their capabilities, their power, and what they're able to do. It's just not something, most shamans are going to be much, much more powerful than you realize that they are. And I'll tell you a story. When I lived in the high desert, Joshua Tree, I grew up there. I knew a man named Jamie. He was a professional boxer, had the title belt in his division and all that stuff. And everybody pretty much knew it was a small town. Everybody knew who Jamie, that Jamie was the pro boxer. Well, he liked to party. He liked to go out and drink and party. And 29 Palms, the next town over, had a very large Marine base. And one night Jamie was out drinking, and he just kind of got in the wrong crowd, and he said the wrong kind of things. And 3 Marines took him out in the desert and basically beat him up. They just beat him to a bloody pulp. Here's this professional title boxer, right? He's the prize trophy for them. And so they beat him up and left him out there for dead. They found him the next day out in the desert, completely unconscious. It took Jamie over a year, literally a year, of rehabbing in a hospital to even regain enough function to live. He had to learn his ABCs all over again. He had to learn to walk all over again. The brain damage was so severe. He had lost 65, 70 pounds, all his muscle, and he was left just this tiny little man who had difficulty even in day-to-day basic functioning, had to move back in with his mom, and just, it was really, really tragic watching him go through all of that and what happened to him. And it happened to him because he was very forward about who he was, and people, they don't like that. They don't like that. And so shamans, we always should come from a place of sort of meekness and humility. And that's one of the reasons why, is to avoid that, people that have malevolent intent and who want to harm us. And so even in our humility and our meekness, those people still do unfortunately exist. We still do live in this duality. And so to completely just ignore it or deny it is really foolish. We should be guarding. And so for this reason, I'm not going to share exactly what is in my medicine bag, but I will talk about it more generically and just share that each and everything that is in the bag holds a very specific sacred, so how can I kind of explain this in a way? So this morning I woke up and it was just a really intense day, and I was like, fucking A, man, it's a heavy metal kind of day, right? Heavy metal in my car, I'm ready to go, right? And so for those of you that like, oh, look, she's doing the devil horns, look, she's a devil worshiper, look, yeah, look, isn't that nice, lovely, my lymphedema arm, my hands all fat from having all my lymph nodes taken out of my arm because they were full of cancer. That's the result of it. Anyway, yeah, so this, when I do this, to me, it and a symbol is what it represents to each individual. There can be, collective understanding, but to me, this doesn't mean I worship the devil. It doesn't mean the Illuminati. It brings in this energetic sense of like, seating myself in my solar plexus and saying like, I'm here, rawr, I'm ready. I'm suited up. Let's get to work. And so I woke up this morning with that energy, like, fucking rock on, man. I'm ready. Let's go. And I wanted to put on my meteorite, actually, because it holds that sort of energetic pattern. It's very, very strong. But I put that on and I'm like, zing, and so I had to sort of step out and go, okay, Amy, like, you're already in that energetic space. And what are you trying to do today? Well, there's another video I need to record today. And it's going to require much more loving energy and being in heart space. So I chose to wear my heart. I put on my heart. And so it's the jewelry that we choose is a reflection of our ego sense, of how we identify ourselves or how we're trying to project ourselves out into the world, the I. But it also holds an energetic sort of pattern for us as well. And so some people will choose to wear like a cross, and it might represent for them their faith and their belief, but also when they put that on or they see that on themselves, it gives them a feeling, an energy, something that they're connecting to. Well, I mean, I guess in a very similar way, that is sort of the things that are in my medicine bag. They hold an energetic connection. And so each one of these things is sort of like a touch point, a symbol, a representation. And I know it's in the bag, so I don't need to, even take it out of the bag. Just having the bag and everything in it is, a very strong source of power for me. Now, these are material things, so don't get me wrong. I'm not saying like within each thing, this has no power. It's a material thing. I bought it at a store. When I die, it's going to be irrelevant. It'll, get passed on or sold or donated or whatever will happen to it. It's just material things. So these in themselves do not like literally hold the power, but it's the representation, the sort of touch point, the connection point that reminds us of our power. And so that's how I use my medicine bag in my expression of shamanism. The other thing I want to talk about is altar work. I have several altars in my home, kind of scattered throughout my home, and they all contain various different sort of things. This here is just an example I brought to share. It's like a little tray that I have of found objects. Here's some Palo Santo, which is like holy wood from Peru. I personally don't use sage in my house because it is very strong. It's very smoky, so it can make the smoke alarms go off. And because I do have a son with autism who's very, very sensitive, and it's just, it's an overpowering, overwhelming smell to him, too strong. So we don't burn sage. We use Palo Santo, and this is obviously an unburned piece. I just keep it in my tray there with everything else. Here's another example of something that goes on altar for me. This is a porcupine quill. My son and I actually collected these at the Horseboy Ranch. If you haven't heard of the Horseboy, look it up. The Horseboy, they have a documentary. He's written a couple books. Isaac's written a couple books about their experience of taking their son Rowan, who has autism, to various shamanic places. Like they literally took a long journey into the hills of Mongolia to meet with the Mongolian shamans in hope of finding, some type of healing and resolution for their son's autism. So the Horseboy Ranch is not far from where I live. My son and I have been out there several times, and they used to have porcupines out there. Unfortunately, the porcupines escaped. They got away. But we collected some of the quills, and I have several of them, but this is just one of the smaller ones that I keep in my tray here. So as you can see, another example of something that's a touch point relevant to us. This here, an arrowhead. My son, amazing, he's so amazing. He found this on the banks of the Kern River, and so it's another little thing in my tray. This little flower, this dried flower here, this was the first little flower that my granddaughter picked for me. She brought it to me and said, here, Mima, here's a flower for you, very sweet. So I let it dry out, and I keep it in the tray. So there's another sort of touch point for me. You know, we have several of these little acorny things. Again, some of them my granddaughter's collected, and some my son's collected. I have a little blue bird egg here that we found. Here's another really cool. I'm pretty sure it's a tooth. I'm pretty sure it's a bobcat tooth. At first we thought it was a claw. We weren't really sure, but I think it's a tooth. And again, my son found this on the banks of the Kern River as well. He also found here in Texas like a full clean raccoon skull after the floods. He brought that home. That also is on altar. It's an amazing thing. I'm very fortunate to have it. So those are some of the things in my tray. Those are not typically the type of things that would go in my medicine bag. The things in my medicine bag I consider much more personal and therefore for me sacred. Here's another example of something that would be on altar for me. I go through periods like everybody does of feeling sort of disconnected, and during one particular time of feeling kind of disconnected, and I was calling out to the spirits and saying, you know, just give me a sign, you know, I want either a blue jay feather or a cardinal feather. Now here in Texas I see cardinals far more than I do blue jays. I mean, and I don't know why that is. I don't know if it's just that the cardinals show themselves more to me than the blue jays do. But one thing I can tell you is I've never, ever, ever found an actual feather from either of those type of birds. So I asked the spirits, please, you know, just remind me that you're here, that you know, you're loving me, you're supporting me, you got my back, you're here. And the sign I want specifically is a blue jay feather or cardinal feather. And I kid you not, a week later, I was in the park with my granddaughter. We were feeding the ducks, and we were walking hand in hand actually to the trash can to throw away the empty bag of peas. And I stumbled across this blue jay feather. And so this is just another example of something that goes on my altar and has a very personal meaning for me. Now also in my altar space, if I do any type of altar work, I do things in effigy. And so that's going to shift and change depending on, you know, what work I'm doing at the time. But always there will be certain things surrounding, and these are the things similar to what I've shared with you that have personal meaning for me, that sort of just connect me and remind me who I am and why I'm here, and my empowerment, the work that I'm doing. The final thing that I want to say is that, you know, as shamans, we should be sticking together. You know, we are long past the times where we're warring tribes or we need to be territorial. You know, it's really interesting because the spirits really revealed to me the other day. I just sort of went into this space open and said, what do you really want to show me today? And the thing that came through to me was this idea of, you know, white privilege, and that white people have, you know, conquered and decimated entire cultures. This evening, my son and I are going to go to our church and actually have an encounter with some indigenous people from the deep rainforest in Brazil. And, you know, I know that the reason that they're sort of doing this, coming to the United States and doing this sort of encounter experience for people, is not only to provide education about their culture, but also to start combating some of the culture loss that they've had as the result of missionaries that have come and sort of forbid them to speak their native language and forbid them to engage in certain types of ritual and ceremony that didn't fit in with the missionary, you know, dogma. And so some of this is being threaded out of their culture, and they want to bring it back in. So they're trying to actually raise money to create a school for their people, to start reteaching their children the culture, the language, you know, and that's happening. It's happening. But the thing that the spirits showed me the other day, because it came to me, why are white people like this? Why are we going out and like decimating entire cultures and so culture centric? And it's interesting because the thing that came back to me is that while that on one hand we sort of vilify that and see that as being, this really negative, awful thing, and we're taught as a culture, as white people, to carry this shame about it, about our ancestors and who they are and the horrible things they've done. And but what the spirits really showed me is that that's been part of the path, that's part of the process that's been necessary to actually break down cultures, not to make everything white culture, although it does seem like that's what is happening, but to break down all the barriers so that we don't have these strong, well, you're in my group and you're not, this strong sense. And so it's been part of the dissolution of those cultural boundaries so that we could get to a point where we actually honor and respect one another as a global family. And I know it seems like a really backwards way to do it. I mean, who am I to question it, though? I'm just saying what the spirit sort of showed me. And it was eye-opening for me because I had never really seen it like that or realized that that could actually be part of the plan, part of the process of our evolution to help break down things, to get us to this point, to realize we truly are global, we truly are one in humanity. And so I just want to encourage you in how that relates to shamanism is that, we all sort of need to stick together. It doesn't really, we're past that point of being the warring tribes. We're past that point of, being the split off factions that didn't agree about certain dogmas. We're past that point. And so it doesn't really matter if you, are following a certain cultural path of shamanism that's different. Like I said at the beginning, for example, the plant medicines are one path. I personally, that's not the path that I'm on at this point in time, but I also honor and respect that is a legitimate path for some people, and it's not an easy path. It's not an easy path. I mean, those medicines are no joke. And so I honor and respect the people that are on that path. And so likewise, we all have to we're brothers and sisters and arm in arm, and we have to have each other's back. We have to love and encourage and support one another. And so all this, like, you're not a shaman, he's not a shaman, look at this, that there's no place for that truly in true shamanic expression in this day and age. There's no place for that. And I'm not saying that there aren't people out there that, are doing things that they shouldn't be doing or that are making mistakes. We're all human beings. Regardless, at the end of the day, we're all still learning, we're all still processing. That's never going to end. As long as we're here on earth, we are still going to be in that position of learning. And so I'm not trying to say that, if you see somebody that's doing something that's wrong, that they're acting in a way that doesn't have integrity, that you shouldn't call that out. But there's a way to do that, and doing it publicly and shaming and slandering, or saying, well, you're not a shaman because you do this. That's not the way that mature people would go about it. I like to use the Bible a lot, and it's not because I absolutely believe, like, tried and true, I live my life by it. There's just a lot of wisdom in it. I have so many years of studying the Bible, and I feel like I really know and understand the basic principles of it, and most of them are pretty right on. And one of the things I did learn from the Bible is if you have a conflict with somebody, you go and you confront that person. If you're not successful, then you come back with 2 more people, and together as a group in love, you confront that person, and you keep trying, you keep going through this process. And once you get to, you've done this step, and this person still is not seeing the light of day, so to speak, then you wash your hands at that point. But you don't go out and slander the person. You don't say, well, they're not a Christian because they're blah, blah, blah. They're not a shaman, blah, blah, blah. That's just, it's not the mature way to handle disagreement and conflict. So I just want to encourage you all, those of you who are shamans, are practicing, are following that path, to love and encourage and support one another. If you see your brother or sister doing something that's not right, confront them in love. and support them, encourage them. Don't attack them and be like, blah, 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 blah. That's not constructive. Nobody really responds to that in a positive way. What you say is you privately go to that person and say, hey, this, you're doing this, or you gently correct. You gently correct in love. You offer your wisdom, not above somebody else, because, at the end of the day, we're all divine beings. We all have a right to be here. We're all on our unique path, and we're all a unique expression of the source. And so we don't want everybody to be like us. I mean, how horrible would the world be if it was like that? So we don't want to assert ourselves over somebody else. We honor their path, but we gently offer them alternative ways and in love. So before I close, I just want to encourage you. 70 million shamans are needed. Step up, step up. Let's love one another and support the process. And we can really start seeing some positive effects, if we do this. And, it's interesting because some people say you don't choose to be a shaman. And there is truth to that. It's a calling. And, some people will say, well, the spirits call you. And that's one way of saying it. I like to think of it more, at least in my life, like a soul imprint. Because for me, I can't ever remember a time when I wasn't shaman. Ever since I was a little girl, I was out in the desert collecting these things. I mean, that's how I taught my son to, let's go outside and let's, look for nature, connect with nature. I've always just been that. And not only that in my level of behavior, but in my conscious understanding of my place in the world and my ability of having that connection, the seeing and the knowing. I've always been shaman. So I didn't have like this clear call where I went from one day being, Amy, I'm a social worker, to, oh, now I have this calling from the spirits and now I'm a shaman. I didn't have that experience of that. So I think some people do, but I don't like to say the spirits called me. I like to call it more like a soul imprint. And we all have a soul imprint. We all came here with some type of imprint of the work we're to do and the path of most effectiveness in doing that work. I think, in that sense, it's not really like this calling that just came out of left field. So in a way, if you don't choose that, if you don't make a conscious choice towards that, you're going to suffer. In the same way, if you have this burning desire to be a teacher, but you end up going to school to do something else, to be an accountant, every day you go to work and you're sitting in that office space pushing the numbers and writing, that you're going to be miserable. You're going to be miserable because you're not fulfilling your purpose. So yes, you can choose to not be a shaman, but there's going to be consequences for you. And in a lot of ways, the consequences for ignoring the calling toward shamanism are much more even severe than they would be for, other sort of missed callings, because it's so deep and ingrained in that soul. It's just you're gonna get torn apart. And, the other side of that is, it is true that nobody wants to be a shaman. It is true that it is a soul imprint. It is a calling, and, you don't choose that. You don't choose it. And the reason why is because it's incredibly, incredibly painful. The amount of work that you have to do is tremendous. And even externally, in helping other people, it's exhausting work. It's underappreciated, and it's just exhausting. You're constantly on everywhere you go. I mean, even in your dream time, you can't escape the work. And it becomes such an integrated part of your lifestyle that it just penetrates everything. And in that sense, nobody wants that. It's hard. It's really hard. Shamans go through tremendously difficult times, dark nights of the soul over and over again. This sort of, the initiations, the shamanic deaths, the dismemberments. I mean, we've all been through these on, in various ways and different levels, and they're incredibly painful and they're hard, and it's lonely. It's lonely. lonely. It's lonely as hell, because nobody gets to really be there with you. Just you and your spirit guides, and it's really tough. Nobody really truly does choose that path. It chooses you in that sense. It's your soul imprinting. It's why you're here. And so there's two sides to that. And, you know, we can identify with both sides of saying, yes, I chose to be a shaman, and no, nobody chooses this. There's both sides of that are sort of a valid way to look at it. So I just want to clear that up in support of other shamans who maybe are going through it. I love you guys so much. Thanks for listening. And if you have any questions about shamanism, or hello, birdie. Oh, I don't know if you saw it. It just flew up right next to me. Yeah, he's right there. He's watching me. Anyway, if you have any questions, or you want to reach out to me, feel free. I'm here, and I love you guys. Have a great day.